Well, welcome back, my fanatical furballs, to the Lewd Lycanthrope, the only channel where corporate crimes get exposed faster than a werewolf at a full moon rave. I'm your host, Chuck Duclaw. And if you thought billionaires just hoarded money and bought yachts, well, think again. Some of them actively kill people too, and somehow still get richer while doing it. Today we're diving into 5 times American companies did something so illegal, so reckless that people actually died. Or at the very least ended up with lifelong medical bills, which in this country is pretty much the same thing. And trust me, these aren't just slap on the wrist level illegal actions. These are the kind of crimes that if you or I did them, we'd be in federal prison sharing a toilet with a guy named Snake. But if you have a few billion lying around, apparently, you just pay a fine, say oopsie, and keep ruining lives. Let's get into it, shall we? Well, alrighty, folks, burning a path into the number 5 spot, we've got the PG&E Campfire from 2018. You know a company is bad when they're literally responsible for burning down entire towns. Pacific Gas and Electric, or PG&E, one of California's biggest utility companies, has a nasty little habit of neglecting its infrastructure. The result, you may ask? Well, massive wildfires, including the 2018 Camp Fire, which killed 85 people and wiped an entire town off the map. PG&E had been warned for years that its aging lines were a fire risk, but instead of fixing them, they spent their money on, you guessed it, executive bonuses. The result? Sparks from their faulty equipment set off the deadliest wildfire in California history. And get this, the Camp Fire wasn't even their first offense. PG&E has been linked to multiple fires over the years, including the deadly Tubbs Fire in 2017. Their punishment, you ask? Well, a few billion in fines, a bankruptcy, and exactly 0 executives seeing the inside of a jail cell. Meanwhile, Tony Early, PG&E's CEO at the time, made millions and just walked away fine. Oh, and let's not forget that even after all this, they still had the audacity to raise customer rates. Because why fix things when you can just charge people more for their impending doom? I'm in the wrong business. Moving into the number 4 spot, we've got the Fireball Pinto. And no, folks, I'm not talking about a bad day in the bathroom after a good night at a Mexican restaurant. I'm talking about Ford's famous Pinto. Ah, yes, it's the 1970s. Bell-bottoms, disco, and cars that doubled as death traps. Ford's Pinto was a tiny little car with one minor little issue. If someone so much as breathed on your bumper, your gas tank could just explode. See, the Pinto had a design flaw that basically made it a rolling Molotov cocktail. If the car got rear-ended, the gas tank was positioned in such a way that it could rupture and ignite, turning minor fender benders into fiery death traps. But Ford, being the absolute villains they are, did a cost-benefit analysis and decided it was cheaper to just pay off lawsuits than actually fix the issue. Documents show they literally crunched the numbers, fixing at a cost of $11 per car, while paying out wrongful death settlements was just slightly more cost-effective. And if that's not dystopian enough for you, some of their test dummies, the crash test dummies guys, well, they caught on fire too. And Ford, well, in their infinite wisdom, they decided, we'll sell the car anyway. Hundreds of people either died or suffered horrific burns before lawsuits finally forced Ford to recall the Pinto. And Lee Iacocca, the Ford CEO who pushed the Pinto into production despite knowing the risks, well, he suffered absolutely no consequences, and even later became a celebrated businessman. Because, money. And America. Yeah. That one will make you sad the more you think about it. Alrighty, coming in at number 3, we've got DuPont and their Teflon is Forever chemicals. Y'all ever heard of PFOA? Probably not, but congratulations, because you definitely have it in your blood. Literally, folks, PFOA, or parafluorooctanoic acid, is a chemical used to make Teflon. And for decades, DuPont knew it was toxic as fuck. We're talking cancer, birth defects, organ failure, the whole spiel. But instead of warning the public, they dumped thousands of tons of it into rivers, poisoning entire communities. One of the worst hit areas was Parkersburg, West Virginia, where locals started noticing birth defects and skyrocketing cancer rates. Internal documents show DuPont knew about the risks as early as the 1960s. They even had proof that the PFOA caused massive tumors in lab animals. And what was their response? Nah, just keep on dumping it. Eventually, lawsuits forced DuPont to pay hundreds of millions in settlements, but for a company that makes billions, well, that's pocket change. And Charles Holliday, DuPont's CEO during the height of the lawsuits, well, he walked away unscathed. Later becoming chairman of Bank of America, believe it or not. Because nothing says corporate accountability like failing upwards. Making us physically sick at number 2, we've got Purdue Pharma and the opioid epidemic. When you think of corporate crimes with a body count, Purdue Pharma is the undefeated champion. These guys single-handedly fueled the opioid crisis by aggressively pushing OxyContin, knowing full well it was addictive as hell. Their marketing strategy was pure evil genius. They lied to doctors, claiming OxyContin was non-addictive. They sent out an army of sales reps to convince medical professionals that this was a safe painkiller. Meanwhile, internal emails proved they knew addiction rates were skyrocketing. The result? Over 500,000 deaths. And still counting. Entire communities destroyed, families wiped out. And all the while, Richard Sackler, one of the key architects of Purdue's strategy, was just raking in billions. After years of lawsuits, Purdue declared bankruptcy. But the Sacklers? Well, they walked away with their billions intact. No handcuffs, no prison time, just another day in corporate America. And finally, crashing into the number 1 spot, we've got Boeing and their 737 MAX cover-up. So let me ask you a question. What's worse than a car that explodes? How about a plane that crashes itself? Well, that's exactly what Boeing gave us with the 737 MAX. A plane with a hidden software flaw that caused 2 fatal crashes, killing 346 people in 2018 and 19. The worst part, you ask? Well, Boeing knew about it the whole time. They cut corners on safety to compete with Airbus, rushed the plane into production, and then hid the deadly flaw from pilots and regulators. Instead of fixing it, they lobbied the government to minimize oversight. After the crashes, Boeing's CEO at the time, Dennis Muhlenberg, tried to downplay the issue while families mourned their losses. He eventually got fired, but don't worry, he left with a $62 million golden parachute while Boeing got a nice slap on the wrist fine. Meanwhile, airlines and passengers were left wondering if their plane would try to murder them mid-flight. Now you may ask, why did I put this one at number 1? Well, it's very simple. These people are so nasty and corrupt that the video that you are watching in the background that you can't hear the audio of is literally about how they are still going at Congress and the Supreme Court to make the FAA overturn their ruling to allow them to continue to operate unsafely like they have been in the past. Let that sink in. They know about the problem. They've already killed people with the problem. And instead of fixing the problem, they decided to go to Congress and court and the FAA to change their rules to allow them to live with the problem. I don't know a better definition of a piece of shit. I really don't. There you have it, folks. Our list of corporate horror stories. The moral of all of this? Well, if you have enough money, you can apparently do whatever the hell you want without much consequence. So which of these infuriates you the most? Or do you have one even worse than our examples? Drop it in the comments and let's rage about it together. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss out on any more tales of corporate debauchery. Stay safe out there, folks. It's a cynical world, and these corporations are not on our side. Now, while I am a fan of the capitalist society, I also know that there needs to be checks and balances to make sure that companies not only don't hurt their employees, but also their consumers. Hopefully in the future, we get somewhere with that. But until next time, folks, stay loud, stay lewd, stay furry. We'll catch you in the next video.